Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for what would have been our Regina Business Growth Luncheon. My name is Josie with WESC. For those who are unfamiliar, Business Growth Luncheon is offered every month in partnership with WESC and the NSBA in Saskatoon and with Economic Development Regina in Regina. So each month we cover a variety of different topics, all tailored to help you in your small business. So with the situation constantly evolving with COVID-19, we will now be delivering this monthly luncheon as a webinar until further notice. And you can visit our website at wesc.ca/events for a list of these upcoming webinars. For today, our topic is social media tips and tricks and is presented by Tara Osipoff of Ayden Creative. Thanks, Tara, for joining us today, and please start whenever you're ready.
Cool, thank you so much. Just to start off, anyone who, I am going to take questions actually throughout the chat, and I'll try to stop and answer them the best that I can. I just want to start out by saying I'm not really going to be focusing on anything COVID-19 related in terms of social media. However, at the end of the presentation, I will take questions about COVID-19 if you have any about social media and what you should be doing. I want to more so just focus on long-term strategy and planning. So I'm going to get started now. As Josie said, my name is Tara, and I'm the CEO of Ayden Creative. For those of you who don't know who Ayden Creative is, we are a branding, design, and marketing firm, and we are based out of Regina. So our slogan at Ayden is "We make great brands better," and the full uncut version of that is "We make great brands better, not mediocre brands good." So I'm going to talk a little bit about that throughout my presentation and what that means to us. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm not going to bore everyone with too many stats. I think we all know why social media is important. But we're just going to look at a few quick ones to go over. There, and you can see on the page there, 54% of social browsers use social media to research products. 30% of online shoppers say they would be likely to make a purchase from social media network like Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, or Snapchat. 23% of online shoppers are influenced by social media recommendations. Oh, someone says that they can't hear us. If you can't hear me, then I do think there's a number you can call. You can now. Okay, great. Okay, so it doesn't matter what type of business you are, even if you aren't selling something directly on these platforms, it's still really good to have a presence and gain brand awareness and customer loyalty by using social media. So before you create accounts on social media platforms, it's really important to first take a step back and do first things first and do an analysis of who your target market is. This is incredibly important for your business as a whole, not just for your social media strategy. So it's important to not just look at the demographics of your target market, but it's also important to look at the psychographics. And I'm going to explain what that is and why that's important in a moment. So psychographics are basically all of the things that your target market does with their life. So what do they spend their weekends doing? What does their disposable income look like? What are the favorite places that they go to? What kind of music that they listen to? It's really important to get to know your target market on a more like psychological deep level so that you know them better and how to market to them. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as this presentation continues. Skip the slide there, sorry guys. So now you have all of your social media accounts set up, now what? Creating a consistent brand is important. People trust brands that are consistent. Think about voice, color, fonts, tones, and style. So once you know who your target market is, and let's say your target market is, females between the ages of 18 and 25 or 18 and 30, you might want to look into what colors they like, what style of fonts they are drawn to. There's a lot of this information online that you'll be able to find out about your target market and how to market to them. Once you do that, you can create a brand around the psychographics and the psychology of that group of people. So it's important to look at where they spend their free time, what they do, because you don't want to just be marketing to yourself. I think that's a lot of issues we see with brands social is that they're putting out content that they like and that they're drawn to, but not who their target market is. So looking at your target market is really important. If your target market seems to spend a lot of time, watching Netflix or out playing sports, maybe you want to gear some of your content on your social media towards somebody who would, or towards people like that. Okay. So here's a brand that I think is doing it really well, Glossier. So one thing I really like about Glossier and brands that have consistent tone is no matter what they put out, you can tell it's from Glossier. So just as an example, one time I was scrolling through social media and I saw this picture, this photograph of a woman, and right away I thought it was a Glossier ad. And although it was just somebody had shared the photo, and so I did some digging, and it was. And so Glossier did a really good job at making sure that their photos always have a consistent style and tone and color and look. And so the really powerful thing that they've done is no matter where you see a photo of theirs or of their brand or of their product, without even having to see the logo, you know that it's Glossier because of the colors, the tone, the photography style. So it's really important when creating your social media plan to take a look at the style of photography that you want to use, the colors, the tones, the fonts, because consistency matters. So if you post photos the same style over and over and over again, it'll become recognizable and people will be able to know that's your brand without even having to see your logo. You'll see this with a lot of really big brands that they have the ability to be recognized by people without even having to see their logo. And I think that's a really powerful thing. So making sure that you're paying attention to the types of fonts you use, that is really important. Before you even decide the type of fonts you use, I think it would be important to either have an agency or yourself do some research on fonts and see what different fonts mean. So does serif or sans serif speak more to your brand? Are you looking to be a more welcoming brand, or are you looking to be a bit more professional? Depending on the way that and direction that you're wanting to go with your brand, you can choose a font that speaks more to that target market. So if you're wanting to be a bit more welcoming and a friendly brand, you might use a bit more rounded font. Or if you are trying to appeal to a more feminine culture, maybe you'll use something a little bit more feminine and soft in terms of your color. Not to say that all females are drawn to soft colors, but if your brand is a feminine brand, that might be something that you want to take a look at. And as you can see, there's a great, in this slide, there's similar color and tone in everything that they do. And I think that's a really powerful thing. So we suggest that all brands that want to be consistent have something called a brand guide. And I'm not sure if anyone knows what a brand guide is or not, so I'm going to quickly go over that. A brand guide is basically a rule book that tells you the types of colors that your brand uses, the types of font that your brand uses, the photography style, etc. And anytime that your brand creates something, any type of content at all, you follow that brand guide. This creates consistency for your brand, and it helps people to recognize your brand when they see it repeating over and over and over again. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. So I'm just going to give you guys a quick tip that I learned. Communication guidelines made easy. So communication guides are a part of your brand book or brand guide. And when people think about branding, they often forget that the style and tone of your communication, is brand guide online or two purchased? Okay, I'll tell you that in a second. So the communication guide, people often forget that that's part of it. When people think of a brand guide or a communication guide, they often think of the logo, the fonts, the colors that a brand uses, but they forget that communication is a huge part of the brand guide. So communication guide is basically telling anyone who interacts with your brand, and I'm talking about people that put out content for you. the type of words that you use, the type of language that you use, the type of grammar that you use. And so when you create your communication guide, it's even things like we use the words cannot instead of can't because we are a professional brand and we wouldn't shorten it. Or maybe you do because you want to be a bit of a softer brand. So this is something that's created internally by the brand. It's not something that you buy online where you pay an agency to create it or you create it yourself. So if you were creating this brand guide yourself, you would say we always use these 4 main colors and we use 16 different tones of them within anything that we create, whether that be print materials, whether that be on social media, whether that be on your website, digital, anything. And your brand lives within those colors. And this is something like, again, that is created by you, the brand, not the public, not something that's purchased, but there is great examples online of brand guides. And so when people are creating the communication guide, I think it can get very confusing as to what their communication should look like. And this a couple months ago, our team went to this conference in Banff called The Gathering, and we got to see a lot of really great brands speak. And I really took away something that Skittles said, and I'm going to share that with you. When creating your brand's communication guide, the easiest way to figure out who your brand is and who your brand is not is by drawing a box. So if you draw a box and on the outside of the box, you write down all the things that your brand is not. So Skittles says we're not vulgar. It should be we are. I can't read into there. It says we are never mean. So they're never mean no matter what no matter what type of content. They're not too cute and they're not gross with their humor. So those are all the things that they are not as a brand. And what I found really interesting is it's easier then once you define what your brand is not to live within the box. Whatever is inside the box is what your brand is. So if you're going to put out content and you're thinking, I wonder if this is something that our brand should say or not. Well, look at what is on the outside of your box. And if it plays within those 4 walls, then you can put it out as content. And I think that's a really cool, simple way to define your brand's communication. So, every brand has their own style and tone and things that they don't want to be online. And I think it's really important to define what your brand doesn't want to be. And then it's easier to play within those walls of what your brand is. So I love that they were like, we're never mean. So if they were going to put out a social media post and it was hurtful to someone else, but even though it was funny, they would be like, okay, no, this is stepping outside of those 4 walls. This is not who our brand is. Or if they had something funny or interesting to put out, but it was vulgar, super easy. It doesn't fit within those 4 walls. So it's really important to continuously evaluate those walls. And I'm going to talk about this later too, but something that I always tell our clients is, and a lot of people say, well, I really don't care what people think, or I don't think people are paying attention. They are paying attention, and people subconsciously or consciously are formulating an opinion and a perspective of your brand, whether you're paying attention or not. So it is really important to define who and what your brand is. And the more consistent you are on social media, the more return you'll have because people trust consistency. And not only that, repetition matters. So the more times that people see your font and your colors, etc., the more that they're going to recognize that as your brand. And I bet all of you can think about a time, consciously probably, and if not subconsciously, you might be thinking of it now, of a time you were scrolling on social media and you saw a color and it made you think of a brand. Probably because they used that color over and over and over and over again on their social media, on their website, on any of their print materials. So yeah, I really like this example, and I think it's a really simple, easy way for you to define what your brand is and what your brand isn't. Okay, what you're saying online matters. Whether or not you're paying attention, your customers are. So we just covered this. I really like this. Now this obviously is old and everyone will remember it, and I will say for sure that Lululemon has made a wonderful comeback from this, but they did have to shift around Chip Wilson because of what happened. So 50% of candidates would not work for a company with a negative brand image, even for more money. So if you all probably remember when Chip Wilson said, frankly, some women's bodies just don't actually work for yoga pants. It's more really about the rubbing through the thighs and how much pressure there is over a period of time. And it's just speaking more to the fact that we have to be super careful about what we're talking or when we're talking about our brand and who represents our brand. It's the way that your staff speaks on the phone to clients. It's the way that your staff speaks to each other. It's the way that your leaders speak to staff and to each other. Everything, all the communication, whether it's verbal or whether it's online, defines your brand. And it's really important to pay attention to that. And if you can have a brand guide that states the type of company you are, the values that you have, your brand purpose, the language that you use, and you drive that into your staff, and you drive that into your social media, and you drive that into all of your marketing materials, people will start to form an opinion around that. And I think that is a very good way to shape the identity of your brand. So creating that communication guide, I think, is one of the most valuable things you can do prior to launching social media platforms or any type of marketing for that matter. Next, how to get them to care, because that's really what it's about. So research has found that the higher the emotional attachment to the brand, the more likely people are to be loyal to that brand. So how can you use social media to create an emotional bond between you and your market? People connect to people, things that are relatable to them, and connect to their own values. You can still feature your products while creating these connections. And I really love this stat. 82% of consumers buy from a brand they have a high level of emotional engagement with, and those consumers will spend 2 times as much on that brand. So I think it's really important to emotionally connect to your consumer. Now, often when we think of emotional connection, we're thinking of something that might be a bit maybe sappy or sad, and that's a way to get people to emotionally connect. But emotions can be humorous. Any way to get people to care, get people revved up about something, get people excited, creating hype around your brand. Those are all emotional connections. And so when you're putting out content on your social media, it's really important to think about that. Am I putting out content that's actually going to get people to care about our brand and who we are? And what does that content say about our brand? So if you're putting out humorous stuff all the time and that's your emotional connection to people, more than likely people are going to come to find you to be a relaxed company that is lighthearted. And if that's not who your company is, then you need to shift your emotional strategy. If you're a type of company that wants to get people to care about a cause, then I think you might want to look at getting people sharing information and emotional information that gets people to care about that cause as well. Okay, so not sure if everyone knows who Katie and Mark are from the Everyday Kitchen. It's really funny because I don't really know them that well, but I feel like I do. And I feel like they're really great, kind, wonderful people from their social media. So the Everyday Kitchen is a donut shop in town, and they also have a coffee shop. I picked one of their posts because I thought it hit the nail on the head when it comes to emotionally engaging to your market. I use this example. So if you can see, Katie shares a story. She has a picture of her son there with one of the donuts. And if you go to this full post, it basically talks about how she came to make sourdough donuts and her story. And she also talks about her brand story and who they are while showing a wonderful, cute photo of her son. And so the examples that I use because she shares a personal photo of her son, which every mom and person can relate to. Shares why she made the product while tying it to a personal story. It's vulnerable and honest, and tells you the problem her product is trying to solve. So when you're using emotion, you can still use it as a promotional and sales tactic. You just have to be more thoughtful in the strategy of how you're sharing it. So Katie got us to emotionally connect to her story by sharing this photo of her son, her cute son, and that donut. Well, she also talked about how her business came to be, which I think is really, really brilliant. And she also told you the problem that her product is solving. This is a huge, huge win. And like I said, I really don't know Katie. I've met her a couple times and she seems very sweet, but I emotionally am connected to her brand and I want to support her brand because of the things that she puts out on social media. So she uses emotion and vulnerability to really connect to her market, and she's successful because of that. And I think that's a really great example of how you can emotionally get to know and put out content that will make people care about your brand. Be honest about who you are. If someone follows you on social media but then goes into your business and it feels like feels completely different, there'll be a consciously or subconsciously a disconnect, and that can affect buying habits. Make sure that your online brand lines up with your physical brand. So if your business is this bright and airy, space that you come into and you feel really alive, and then they go to your social media and it's like this dark and gloomy and it's putting out like posts that use like a lot of black backgrounds and harsh fonts. And then they come in, whether or not one of them is good and one of them is bad, that's not really what I'm saying here. There's a disconnect. So people that follow you on social media might be like, oh, that doesn't feel right. I follow them on social media and this isn't the vibe that I got at all. And now I'm in their store and it feels completely different. So it really has to align, and you need to make sure that your brand is consistent not only on social media, but also in person. I love Everlane is a really great brand, and I have a lot of respect for them. They, on their website, and that's the thing, is your website should feel like your social media. When someone goes from your social media to your website, it should feel the same. So people should be able to recognize your social media on your website. So if you're using blues and those the same tones on your social media, you should be using the same tones, fonts, colors, photography style on your website and any other digital space that you're in. So Everlane talks about their radical transparency, where their products are made, them being environmentally friendly on their website. They are really honest with their consumer, and they're the same way on social media. And I think that's really important. So 91% of consumers would rather buy from an authentic brand. So when people feel the disconnect, so if you saw this wonderful brand on social media and they seem so caring and great, and the person that runs their social media might be, but they go in and the people who are looking after them are a bit cold and not as warm as they're appearing on social media, then they're going to feel that disconnect and it's going to feel inauthentic. Or if you are saying that you're an environmentally friendly company on social media, and then that actually isn't true in your shop or in the products that you create, that's also going to create a disconnect with the consumer. And so authenticity equals trust. It's really important to be honest about who you are, no matter who you are. And if you're an edgy brand, be an edgy brand. That's okay, but just be consistent about it. So talking about yourself is boring. I got to see Alex Broadman from Spotify speak this year as well, and this was his line, talking about yourself as a brand is boring. And I think that's so true. One thing we try to do at Ayden is constantly talk about our community, and I think that's one of our values is building community. And so I think it's really important for a brand not to just always be talking about your product, but also be talking about your community, your brand purpose, your brand story, your customers, your staff, your inspiration, the problem your products are solving. And so there's really clever ways that you can do that while still promoting your brand. But it can be really boring just to see products over and over and over and over again. So if you can find ways to show them by being creative, by showcasing your community or showcasing your brand purpose, I think that's a really big way. And I think I've got some examples here. So let me check. Oh yeah, great. So these are three examples. One is local, is multinational, the other is Lush, and the other one is Sage. So these are all community initiatives that they are supporting, but they're still promoting their brand by showing this. So Multinational is running a summer internship program. They also do a community support initiative that they talk about on their social media, and I think that's really powerful. It makes you care about their brand. And I like to think that Multinational doesn't sell beer; they sell community first, and then beer. And Lush talks a lot about their staff, and on their products, they're always showing which staff made it. I had a really good question from a friend of mine recently asked, well, what if we don't have that many staff and we want to show our staff, but what if one of those staff members leaves? And I like to think of it like kind of like an analogy of something else I heard once, which was it's a famous kind of quote, and it's you can invest in your staff and they may leave, but what if you don't invest in your staff and they stay, which is worse? And so it's kind of the same here. You can invest in people getting to know your staff and your brand, and sure, they may leave, but isn't it worse to have people not get to know the type of people that work at your business and the type of people that they can emotionally connect to? So for social media brands or being on social media, I think it's really important for people to get to know the people behind the brand. But it's also really important not just to always be focusing on your staff. You need to talk more about your community, the people that use your products, the people that invest in your brand, the community that supports you. You need to highlight them. It isn't enough to always be talking about you, and how great you are and all the things you're doing. People want to know the type of community that you support, the values that you have. They want to stand behind a company that cares. And so there's really clever, interesting ways that you can do that. And these are 3 really great examples. Okay, so I did touch on this a little bit. What do the colors you use say about you? So color theory is really, really important. I don't think it's paid attention to enough. So on the left is a example of the colors used in the healthcare industry. As you can see, primary color used is blue, and the reason being is that blue conveys trust. And so using blue or tones of blue can really convey trust to their market without having to say the words trust. So it's really important to look into the type of colors you're using. On the right is a cafe food company, and they're using yellow a lot and blue. But the point of that is yellow is a reminder of sunshine and happiness, and that's who their brand is. So it's really important to take a look at the colors that you're using on social media and the psychology of those colors, which you can find this data online, or an agency can help you do that research as well. So looking into that and building your color palette around that is really, really critical. And not just the colors used in social media. As I said earlier, this should be part of your brand guide that you're using constantly. Okay, a simple equation, sharing some secrets here. Emotional plus promotional plus educational equals good content. So we basically say that a percentage of your posts that go out should be emotional, a percentage should be promotional, and a percentage should be educational. So I'm going to get into some examples of exactly what that means. Before I do that, it's really important to note that the percentage of each differs depending on the type of brand you are. So a bank, that's not necessarily true, but not just a bank. I mean, depending if you're a really serious professional brand, you might not want to constantly be putting out, high emotional posts all the time. Maybe you do, but you really have to look at what percentage you're using and does it relate to the target market that you're trying to reach. So let's look at some examples here. I love this post. This is from one of our clients. We didn't make this post, but they shared this really cute post about this couple that's been coming in to see them for years and years and years and told their story. And I thought that was a really great way to show the way that they take care of their community. Yes, they are an automotive company, but that doesn't mean that they can emotionally connect to their target market through social media. This is a couple. They said that they've been Chrysler customers since 1948, and what a wonderful way to share about the community that they're in, and the type of brand they are, and that they're loyal to the Knight family. And I think that was a really great way to talk about the brand, the Knight brand, and the type of customers that they have while showcasing their community. Another emotional brand, this one is one of ours, and I thought it would be cool to put it in because it's an electrical company, but they emotionally connect to their target market through humor. So every week we put out Friday funnies, and our client Dan from Cross Electric is a pretty dad joke type of guy, and they're like a humorous, lighthearted brand, really cares about the community. And so we put out these Friday funnies, and they get tons of engagement. So engagement doesn't always have to be like this and be a tearjerker. It can also make people laugh, which I think is really interesting and a different use of emotional connection. Another one that uses humor is Charmin on the left. I think that was a really cute thing that they do on Twitter. They've got lots of really fun stuff that they put out that makes you laugh and makes you kind of connect to the brand. You're like, oh, Charmin's not this big, serious corporate company. They actually want to connect and say funny things, and I think that's really cute. Dove did this thing that I thought was awesome. It's so relatable. We all have things that we're insecure about, and I think people got tired of seeing these over-edited photos of people online that make them look perfect. We're not perfect. We all have insecurities and things that we're not in love with about ourselves, but Dove's finding a way to emotionally connect to us by saying, hey, you can celebrate these things. So they featured this lovely, I think she must be like a client or a community member, and just saying that she's got this rash and that she's proud of it, and that it reminds her of all of these things built back home. So I think it's really cool how they did that and how they're emotionally connecting to people. Another emotional one from Gillette. It says they said he wouldn't play in college. He ran drills. They said he wouldn't get drafted. He worked harder. So this is a really good way to emotionally connect again. So it doesn't matter what kind of business that you have, you can emotionally find some way to emotionally connect to your target market, and don't do it just by showing your product. Use community, use people who really use your products or your service. And it doesn't matter what kind of service you have. Like I said, if you have a bank, tell a story about a customer and why they love your bank, or if it's a professional service, it doesn't matter. I get questions from clients a lot saying, yeah, but we're one of a trades company. How can we do that? There's so many ways to highlight people and emotionally connect to your target market. And who can't relate to that? You know, how many times in life have we been said that we can't do something and we want to prevail because of that, and we work harder because of it? And so that really emotionally drew me, and I thought, oh, wow, that's really great that they're sharing that story. Okay, promotional. This is promoting product and sales. So people always think when we're promoting product that it has to be just like a picture of the product. But you can still use community, and I think Lululemon does a really good job. They highlight a lot of their global ambassadors, and they're just local folks in different communities that they highlight, and they're wearing their products. So you can showcase your products while still not highly talking about yourself. So you can use a community member or somebody who uses your product or service to have a promotional post. And remember, right now we're talking about all of your posts should fall under those three areas, or we believe, educational, promotional, and emotional. So we're on the promotional section. And so North Face that's a really good way to showcase the product as well. It's beautiful shot. It's still in their style, but they're showcasing product. WeWork, they're showing that you can work anywhere in the world. Look at that beautiful shot, saying, "Hey, we're here working, and we're getting work done in a really beautiful place." Lego on the right, another great way to be promotional. They're talking about their favorite logo or Lego pieces and showing it in action. So those are some promotional type posts. Educational. So educational, this section, so promotional is strictly when you're promoting your product, okay? Educational is when you're talking about the history of your company, who your company is, its values, and your brand. So Sage on the left is talking about their values. They're talking about self-love and doing more. So you have a set of values and you're like, our values are X, Y, and Z. You don't have to always say, these are our values. You can find interesting ways to share your values through synonyms of your values, or putting out quotes that articulate your values. You don't always have to just say, like, our values at this company are X. You can say them by sharing a quote that resonates with your values. Then people will start to identify, or subconsciously start to identify with those values and shape a perspective around that. On the right is, I love A&W. I think they've got really great marketing. I should say A&W Canada. They said what's inside counts. And so here they're actually talking about, you don't see like a picture of their delicious burger, so they're not doing a promotion. They're talking about the core of their business. They're basically saying that, and I don't know how much you all know about A&W, but the type of products that they use, they're supposed to be healthier than a lot of other fast food companies. And so this is them educating on that. Okay, so this is Congress Wood. I wonder if she's on here right now. She might not. Didn't know I was going to put this in here. I don't know this family, but I follow them on social media, and I think they're just the most lovely people. I love this as an educational post because they're educating on who they are as a brand and how they came to be. So educating on your brand history doesn't have to be like, we started this company 20 years ago. It can say like, this is our story. This is who we are. These are the people behind the brand. These are our values. So these are all educational type of posts. So promotional, educational, and emotional. I love this post. It made me feel really connected to them. Before they had put this out, they'd just shown a lot of products, which I think was great, but this made me feel a lot more connected. I've talked to them a bit on social media, but I didn't really know who was behind the brand. And once they did put this post out, I was like, wow, this is really cool. It made me feel even more connected and want to support them even more. So I think that's really great. Okay, your market will tell you what they want, but you have to listen. So we often put out content, and we're not even looking at analytics to see what people are engaging with or what people care about. We're just continue putting out. But we need to stop and listen to the market. They're going to tell you what they want to know about your brand. So we use that slide isn't loading. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on there. Sorry. So we use Hootsuite Analytics, and we know that photos of our staff get more engagement than photos of graphics that we put out. So we put out less graphics, Ayden Creative specifically, I should say. So we're really proud of the work and the design we do. We've got such a killer team here, and I want to showcase them and be proud of them and the work that we create. However, we don't get as high of engagement on those photos and posts. So we have to get clever about how we share our work. And we have to remember too, just because someone isn't clicking like on something doesn't mean that they didn't see it or that it wasn't valuable. It's just not something that they care to engage with. So you may want to put out less of those posts. Example, if your market is responding well to photos of your team, find ways to share valuable information while sharing photos of your team. So people respond really well to the photos of our team. So I share a lot, I actually don't do our social media, but our wonderful team does, and they will share a photo while also telling about a product or something that we're doing. So this is about Creators Club, the one example that I used. We're talking about Creators Club, we're sharing a photo of our team. So you can look at the analytics of your social media and see how which type of posts are performing the best, and then adjust your strategy to fit within that. So people are responding the best to photos of people, which they usually do, or specifically photos of your team, then you may want to slide in your content while sharing a photo of your team. Or if they're responding really well to your community photos, maybe you want to put your product with your community. So there's really clever ways to do that, but you're always look at your analytics to see what people are responding the best to. Engage. Content is king. And the new form of content is conversations. Ask questions, respond, and share. So actually took this from Carlos Gill. He's a person that wrote the book End of Marketing. He's a really brilliant guy. You should follow him on social media and LinkedIn. He's got a book out, as I said. I mean, it's not a new concept, but it's something that I think we all need to be reminded of in here. It's not enough to just put out an ad or a social media post and then not monitor the comments. And if people say something on your social media or comment back. Yes, it takes time. His name is Carlos Gill. I'll just put in here. So it's not enough to just put out content and then not pay attention to it again. So people do this a lot with ads. And that's why ads can perform poorly. Is someone might put out an ad and someone might leave a negative comment on it or ask a question, and then the brand never responds. You can tell the brands they're doing a really great job because they take the time to go through the comments and actually pay attention to what people are saying, what they're asking, and then they respond back to them, and people feel valued. So imagine this big brand, just as an example, I reach out to brands all the time. I comment on their photos, I send them messages, and I have such a connection to the brands that have messaged me back. Just an example, I posted last month a photo of myself wearing something from Aritzia. I tagged them in it. They messaged me back a little heart and said, thanks. They're a huge company, but they still took the time to message me. I also got some really great tights, and I posted about them. They sent us a message. And I don't have that many followers on my social media. To be honest, I don't really have time to post on my social media, my personal social media a ton, which I'm trying to get better at. But they still took the time to message me back, which I think is really valuable. So if you can ask questions in your content when you're putting out photos or content, make sure that you respond to people, have conversations with people, ask questions. And the more you do that, the more valued people will feel when you take the time to respond to them. If you do not have time to do that, have someone else on your team do that. I also find if someone sends a message to a brand and they don't answer it, that is a loss. People are asking for you to engage with them, and you're not. That's not good. You need to take the time to respond and show up as a brand. So I think it's really valuable to not just have somebody run your social media, but to have somebody monitor comments, respond to people, and when they respond, when they send messages back, are they following your communication guide? So if someone has something negative to say, we can emotionally want to respond and be in high emotional state, but that might not follow our brand guide. It's important to take a breath, take a look at the brand guide and say, okay, we're never mean. All right. So no matter what someone said, we've got to be kind back and find a way to resolve this issue by being kind. So anytime you respond to a comment on your social media or a message, it's really important to take a moment, take a step back, and look at the brand guide. Okay, how do we communicate? Okay, now I feel comfortable responding to this. Okay, tools. Have a scheduled content day. So I think it's really great if it can be overwhelming to think about a month of content. But if you have a few days a month where you actually create the content, schedule photo shoots, prepare, and have a strategy, you're going to be much more successful. I highly recommend doing that. It doesn't feel like a burden. You actually have a strategy. You're sitting down and thinking about the content that you're putting out, which will make the content way more successful. If you can, use a social media scheduler. We use Hootsuite. They're really great. They've really grown over the past years, and they've developed extensively, and I'm really happy with that company. But there are a lot of free resources that you can be using to schedule your social media content and create it. Algorithms are always changing. Set aside time to look them up. So I didn't cover any like times that you should post or how much you should post today because it's constantly changing. So what I said today could change tomorrow. So you've got to constantly looking up like your hashtag strategy, your the times that you're putting out posts, what time performs the best, for your target market. Because, you know, before 7 p.m. on a Sunday was a very, very high engagement. But for who? Was it that 18 to 30-year-old? Is that your target market? You know, that's important to think about. And it is important to think, again, just to reiterate what I said earlier, only using social media platforms that your target market is on. So if your target market is people 30 to 45, 50, you probably don't need to be on TikTok right now. Maybe as time goes on and that demographic adapts more to that platform, then you can start thinking about using TikTok more. But don't invest your time in social media platforms that your target market doesn't exist on. And so do the research, set aside time to look at algorithms, look at the changing of social media. If you don't have time, assign someone on your team to do that. Figure out your brand. Who are you? What are your values? That's number one. So at the beginning of this presentation, I said, Ayden makes great brands better, not mediocre brands good. So one of our rules is that we work with brands that have a purpose. We don't want to work with brands that their only purpose is to exist, is to make money. Sure, making money is important. We all know that. But if you have a cause or a purpose that is greater than making money, you will be more successful as a company. There's so much research out there that points to this. You can go on aydencreative.com and we've got some blog posts up about this. The research is out there. The more your brand shares the values, your values and your purpose, the more successful you'll be, because you create brand loyalty by wanting, or by people connecting to your brand purpose and values. Be consistent. So if you're going to post once a week, that's fine. Just make sure you're posting once a week, because people will subconsciously or consciously know that you're putting out content once a week. And so they'll want to tune in. But if you put out content every day for a week and then you don't show up for 3 weeks, likely people aren't going to be going to your page to look at your content. And also, consistency also matters in fonts, in colors, in the language that you use. It's not just about time and how much content you put out. It's about consistency overall. Be real. This is super important. People, this is the thing about consistency and authenticity. If you are not who you are on social media, people are going to feel that phoniness, and they are not going to want to engage with your brand or you as a person. So if I'm not who I am on social media, then people are going to feel that disconnect. It's really important just to be real, who you are as a company, who you are as a brand. Don't just put out content to have content going out. If you're like, oh, we don't have something to put out today, we should just throw up something. That is terrible strategy. Think about the things that you're putting out. Are people going to find it useful? If not, don't use it. Just wait until you have something that people will actually find valuable. Because if you start putting out junk content, people are just going to naturally start to scroll by. Oh, the last 5 posts were just, fillers, and this one probably is too. And that one might be a really important post. So don't just put out content to put out content. Get people to care more about your brand. I think I've said this 100 times throughout this presentation. The more people care, the more people are going to want to be loyal to you and your products, and your brand and your staff, etc. Lastly, be human. So on the right or left of your screen is Tom Herbst. He was the CMO of the North Face. And I got a chance to got introduced to Tom this year, and I think he's a really brilliant man. And what I love the most is, he said be effing human on a stage in front of 1,500 people about the North Face. So basically what they were saying was, it's sometimes we put out content, we're pushing out communication, and we forget to step back and be a human. Okay, well, this is what our brand guide says. Okay, well, right now we have to do the right thing and be a human being and be considerate of other people's feelings. Even in a time like right now, with this virus going around, maybe the first thing we want to do is sell to people because we're scared that we might lose our company. But we have to step back and think about being a human first. What can I do to be a helper first, and sell my product second? How can I help other people instead of just pushing out my product right now? So being a human is one of the most important parts of any brand strategy. And a brand as big as North Face. So North Face, and Tom admits that it kind of got lost when it grew really big. They were producing more than ever, but their sales were dropping on a decline until they injected their brand back into their purpose. And part of their brand was being a human. And so that really worked for them. And I think they have a lot to be proud of as a brand. Okay, that's it. So now I'm going to open it up to questions. I hope that you all enjoyed this and you found some value in it. So fire away if you have any questions. Just give everyone a couple minutes. Great, I'm glad that you found it informative. That's awesome. And we are, just to note, Ayden Creative is doing an extended version of this. Can't remember the date. Amanda, if you're listening to this, can you put up the date of our social media webinar? We are doing a 3-hour session. I think it is in April. It'll be a webinar as well, except for it'll dive way deeper into this stuff. It's really affordable as well, that you guys can sign up for if you want. It'll get really into the nitty gritty of posting and just a very much more extended version of this with a workshop. I see lots of people are typing, so we'll just give everyone a second. No, this one is through West, but the second one is actually through Ayden Creative, and you can register, I believe, through our website. But I'll let Amanda, who works for Ayden, who's on this, send out some information on that. For Alyssa, that is something you'd have to ask West for that one. That's a question for them. Can you touch on reaching your target on LinkedIn or Twitter? Okay, so that's a really good question. LinkedIn is a tougher game, and so is Twitter. One, because if you look at the research on Twitter, people thought that Twitter was on a decline, but actually people just weren't engaging with posts as much, but it was still on an incline of people registering for and signing up for Twitter and using the platform. It grows year after year. It's just that people aren't engaging as much. So it can be a little bit trickier to learn about your market because there isn't as much data as to who's liking your comments, right, or retweeting them, because people are engaging less, but it doesn't mean they're using Twitter less. Twitter is being clever on Twitter is really important, and I always think one of the hardest things that you can do is, and what Twitter challenge is being effective in less amount of words. And so you've got to constantly look at the things that you're saying and reevaluate them and think about, okay, is this important? Is it not? How can I structure it to be shorter? Can I provide a link that links to more information? If you can send people on Twitter back to your website, that's always a win. But I will note on Facebook, if you are taking people away from Facebook with a link, your content will start to rank lower. So your content and the algorithm, how it works is if you are getting people to stay on Facebook longer, the higher Facebook will rank you. So if you are showing links to leave Facebook to go to your website or to go to an article, it will actually rank lower, which is good to consider. And LinkedIn is the same. So you have to remember the target market of LinkedIn. It's generally professionals and wanting to engage with more professional content. So that's more where you put a lot more of your educational pieces or rewording your emotional pieces just to fit that specific platform. And you don't have to put out as much on LinkedIn because people don't post as often on LinkedIn. So if you're posting all the time, it can be overwhelming and your company can feel like it's oversaturating someone's feed and they'll want to unfollow you. So it's really important to be extra cautious about how much content you're putting on LinkedIn, the type of content you're putting out, and how often. Okay, just a second here. Amanda put a link to the webinar that we're posting. Okay, Sarah asked, what's the best way to target who your market is when you do? Okay, so it doesn't matter if you have a wide variety or not, analytics will tell you who your market is. So even if you're like, oh, I have so many different people, analytics will still show you who that top 50% or 45% of your market is. So it doesn't matter if you're like, oh, but I sell to so many different people. If you look at your analytics on your website, on your Instagram page, it will tell you no matter what, no matter who you are, you have a target market. People who are like, oh, I'm not really sure if I have a target market or not. You definitely do. You just need to look at your analytics. So your analytics will tell you, okay, it's women between the age of 30 and 45, or it's men between the ages of 20 to 35, and then you can look into who they are. I love using a platform like Hootsuite. Usually, if you want to dive deeper into your psychographics of who your market is, then you're going to have to use a platform that dives deeper into the analytics of who is following you and who is engaging with your brand. Once you know who that is, so if it is women between the ages of 30 and 45, you can start to look at your products. Well, how expensive are they? Okay, well, who buys these types of products? And then you can do a little bit more research into that demographic. Okay, well, it's middle-class families, you can find research online as to what types of things they're doing with their disposable income, what they do with their time off, how they're using products. There's tons of research out there. I will be talking more in depth. Sarah, I know you are attending our webinar webinar in April. I will dive deep into that and the psychographics of your target market in that session. Do we find more success on Facebook or IG? Our target market, to be honest, is we engage a lot. We use different platforms differently. So on LinkedIn, we put more educational type posts while still using emotion. And then on IG, we engage with our community, heavy engagement on community. And then on Facebook, we're more promotional, talking a little bit more about our brand because we know that the demographics on Facebook are different. So you can actually put out different content on each one of your platforms based on the markets that are on those platforms. And I think you'll find different success on different platforms based on what you're putting out. Okay, will analytics be taught in your seminar? We'll talk a bit about analytics for sure in the seminar or in the webinar in April, and how to get them and what to do and where to find more research about your target market. Okay, I think that's all for questions. Does anyone have anything else? Okay, well, that's about an hour. Oh, there is a couple of people typing. I'll hold off for a second. Great. Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. If anyone does have any questions about social media during the COVID-19, you can reach out to me personally. It's not something I want to touch too much on. I think people should really be focusing on engaging with their community and with just being helpful and helpers right now, and get back to their regular scheduled content later. I'm going to kick this back to Wesk. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today, and have a great day, everybody. Stay safe and healthy.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Tara, for taking the time to share some of these social media insights with us. I found it very informative, and I hope everyone who attended did as well. Also, thank you to everyone else who was able to join us on today's webinar. As we mentioned before, you will be able to watch this on demand on our website by the end of the day today. So stay tuned at wesk.ca for that webinar there. We will also send out the link to Tara's social media webinar for those who want to sign up for that too. Our next upcoming webinar is tomorrow, and it was originally the Saskatoon version of our Business Growth Luncheon. Tomorrow's topic is Marketing in the Mayhem, and it is presented by Sarah Wheelwright of Trusted Marketing Services. And registration for that is now open on our website as well. Thanks, everybody, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.